Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company 440 Sports Titans Monday on YouTube at Stillman & Co., the YouTube page. Well, last time I checked, 985 subscribers. We're so close to 1,000. So hit that subscribe, and today is the final day that we are on, or I guess it's not the final day. It's the first day that we're just on the Stillman & Co. YouTube page. We are no longer simulcast on the 440 YouTube page. And so, again, if you were somebody who watched on 440, just get your ass on over here. And again, we are on all of your podcast platforms: Apple, Amazon, iHeart, Spotify. Like and subscribe, listen. And again, as soon as we're done here, I mean, we put that podcast right up there, so hopefully people on their way home. I've been looking at the analytic tools, which are fun to play with. I've been looking at all those analytic tools, and I see that a lot of people are downloading the podcast in the 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. hour. That is the point of this program, is that I, instead of doing 4 hours and repeating the same 4 hours, 2 or 3 times during the day, or repeating the same hour a couple of times, I really just, hey, this is the main takeaways, and on we go about our day. So we'll also, as you've been seeing at the bottom of the screen, if you're watching live on YouTube, we've been getting in some of the comments, and the Fire Brian Callahan comments are already rolling in. I know. That's the story after yesterday's horrendous performance against the LA Rams in the second half. Everybody wants to fire Brian Callahan. And it is a Titans Monday, and so that's what we will be today. I feel the need to address what I think the biggest problem with the Titans and the Titans fan base, that's you, is. And it is the blame one guy approach that for some reason this fan base seems to have. It's always one guy's fault. Last year, that one guy was Will Levis. Everything bad that happened was Will Levis's fault. But you do know that they lost every game, for the most part, that Mason Rudolph played too, right? So that one guy right now is Brian Callahan. I have listened to a bunch of different shows. I've, again, seen what people are saying, yesterday on Post Game Live. I'm seeing, and it is just all fire Callahan, fire Callahan, fire Callahan, and fire Callahan. Again, the blame one guy approach that this fan base and the owner seem to just be obsessed with. And let me say this as far as the fan base is concerned. It is not your fault, you the fans. It is not your fault this team sucks. And this problem, I assume, blame one guy, is not unique to the Titans fan base. I'm sure that this is probably every fan base that goes about their business like this, of always blaming one guy. When things are bad, making one guy out to be the bad guy. So I'm guessing that most NFL fan bases act like this, but it is not a good approach. And if there's anything I've learned in the last 5 years, it is that for some reason, this ownership or the decision makers, whatever you want to call it, they seem to all listen to the fans. So keep that in mind. Now, are the Titans awful? Yeah, they stink. Are they hard to watch? Yeah. That second half yesterday was painful. I mean, in the first half, at halftime, I thought there was a chance they might win the game. Are they poorly coached? Absolutely. I mean, they had 13 penalties in the first game. They had 10 penalties in the second game. They can't get lined up. They can't jump on side. They can't play on sides. Yes, they're poorly coached. They had a touchdown wiped off the board because of an illegal blindside block that was a legitimate call. and had nothing to do with the play. And the player, Cedric Gray, on the sideline was just screaming about, oh my God, I didn't do anything wrong. And CBS shows the guy, and he clearly did something wrong. And I'm like, that's just bad coaching. So are they bad? Yeah, they're bad. Are they hard to watch? Yeah, they're hard to watch. Are they poorly coached? Yeah, they're poorly coached. You know, they talk about the halftime adjustments because the Titans in the 2 years that Brian Callahan has been the head coach, they've just been dreadful for the most part in the second half. And so even Callahan was asked about it today, but the media people push back when it's asked about what's wrong with all these halftime adjustments. Well, you know, in halftimes in the NFL are 12 minutes long or whatever they are. They're 12 minutes long, so they really just go in and they take a whiz and they grab a Gatorade and then they get back out there on the field, you know, and the coach comes in and says, all right, we're going to go out there and we're going to play hard. And they say, yes, coach, and they get out there. Again, whatever you want to call them, in-game adjustments, halftime adjustments, the other teams seem to always make them. You don't. And then there's the reality that Brian Callahan through 18 games through 19 games is an abysmal 3-16. Would the Titans be better off with somebody else coaching the team? I have to ask, how could it be worse? This is like when Rand Carthon was general manager and people wanted to defend him. And I was sitting there saying, I could GM this team better. Now, I'm not sure I could coach the team better, but I'm not sure I could coach them worse. But the moral of the story today, as the YouTube chat just seems to constantly populate with people saying, fire Callahan, Callahan sucks, as one guy puts in here, Bill Callahan in Jared Stillman's voice. By the way, I do love how many people loved that, and I did love doing that. This mess isn't only Brian Callahan's fault. And yesterday's loss wasn't only Brian Callahan's fault. And thus, changing Brian Callahan out as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans would not fix all of the problems that this team has. It's an itch that you want to scratch. You're angry. And you know Callahan's not a good coach. And unlike last season when they would lose all those games, there was some optimism of, well, let's see Callahan with another quarterback, or let's see Callahan with a full offseason, and let's see Callahan. I'm telling you, I knew when he didn't make major changes to the coaching staff outside of the special teams coach, which is the one productive unit on the team. I knew when they didn't make those changes, Callahan didn't have a clue. I knew it. When the coaching staff was only Chris Harris chooses to leave, they replaced him. Justin Outen's contract expired, and they went out and got a special teams coach because I'm pretty sure Amy and everybody else said Colt Anderson's not coming back. That told me Callahan doesn't understand the root of the problem. So, is there reason to fire Brian Callahan? Sure. But I just don't think that firing Brian Callahan, while again, I do feel like this scratches that itch that everybody has, I don't think that it really changes anything right now. Now, I'm not one of these people that will say things like, it's not Brian Callahan's fault that that guy didn't make that play. It's not Brian Callahan's fault that Xavier Woods missed the tackle on Puka Nakua's touchdown. It's not Brian Callahan's fault that Chigakonkwo, Tony Pollard, and Calvin Ridley don't know how to catch the ball. It's not Brian Callahan's fault that J.C. Latham got hurt and John Ojukwu went in there and he stinks. Because he's the head coach. And the reality in the NFL is you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. But the switching to Mike McCoy as the head coach, who again I think is the most viable and probably only realistic option, does that really do anything? Does that really make that big of a difference? Firing Callahan at the end of last year and installing a new head coach, that makes a difference. But unfortunately, none of y'all have a time machine. And if you did have a time machine, I would say let's go back even further and make some of these other problems they have go away. And here's why the cycle of blame that the Titans and the Titans fan base seem to have is very dangerous. This is why, again, I think it is dangerous to pin everything right now on Callahan, who I think is a pretty bad coach. When you always seem to pin the problems on one guy, you're absolving everybody else of blame. And that's why Brian Callahan is the coach today. Because Ran Carthon is the one who got all the blame, and Will Levis got all the blame for last year. And Callahan, who had the same issues with penalties and discipline and offensive adjustments that apparently are made throughout the course of the game that seem to manifest themselves in the second half every single week, were all problems last year. But when you only blame one guy, you absolve everybody else of the blame. In 2022, John Robinson got fired during the season. A.J. Brown had been traded, and that was bad. But if you remember what really led to this, it was that in 2021, the Titans took Caleb Farley and Dylan Radins in the first and second round. And by the middle of 2022, it was obvious both guys were busts. 2020, first-round pick Isaiah Wilson was already off the team. So everybody blamed John Robinson. Oh, John Robinson sucks. So they pinned everything on him. And Amy fired him. Forget about the fact that they were in first place or they had been the number one seed the year before with 90 players on the roster. Everybody decided Robinson was the problem. The great Mike Vrabel got zero blame in that instance, even though he was the one that chose to keep Todd Downing on as offensive coordinator. But again, we're only blaming one guy around here. So there's no way that anybody would have held the great Mike Vrabel accountable. Then the next year, it was all Mike Vrabel's fault. Remember, Ran Carthon came in, and he was going to be great. Let Ran cook. He came in and immediately pissed off the team's defensive leader in Kevin Byard. He signed Andre Dillard, gave Aaron Brewer $2 million extra that they didn't need to do, drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick, and when the team went to shit because of a lot of those moves, everybody just put it on Vrabel. Put it on Vrabel, put it on Tim Kelly, put it on Jason Houdeling, put it on the things that, again, needed to be changed, but that's what happens when you blame one guy. And so Vrabel gets fired, and Ran Carthon gets a promotion, even though he didn't do anything positive the year before. Last year, Ran Carthon was the guy who Amy put the blame on. The fan base put the blame on Will Levis. I would say 50% of the fan base was fighting for Ran Carthon to keep his job, which tells me how stupid some of you are out there. But the fan base put the blame on Levis, who essentially got fired with the drafting of Cam Ward, and Amy put the blame on Carthon. Brinker got a promotion, as Joe points out in the YouTube chat. Callahan kept his job. But all of Callahan's issues as the head coach remain. Penalties, adjustments, failure to develop the quarterback. And everybody just completely ignored. All of those issues. And they just said, oh, no, that's not his fault. Again, go back to Levis. Brian Callahan was hired to coach Will Levis. He was hired to, this is going to sound so ridiculous now to say it, but he was hired to make Will Levis a franchise quarterback. And then when he didn't, it wasn't, maybe Callahan's not a great coach at developing quarterbacks. It was, oh, well, Levis sucks. And nobody could have developed Levis. Maybe. Or maybe both things are true. So, again, all the problems Callahan had last year that are still problems this year, last year everybody just ignored because, again, it was the pin it on one guy thing. And everybody else, oh, no, it's fine. Penalties ought to be fine. Pee-wee program. Was it? Which takes me to the moral of the story. And if you're a listener of mine for a long time, this is going to feel very repetitive. And if that's the case, I'm sorry. But I've been banging on this drum for years now. since Thanksgiving of 2023, when I said, get ready to blow all of this up. And they have refused to do it every opportunity they've had. Let's go back to 2023. I understand not blowing it up after 2022. Again, I thought the decision to fire Robinson when they fired Robinson was stupid, but let's say, fine, that's the case. You go with Vrabel, Tannehill returns, Henry returns, fine. Team sucks. They spent no money in free agency. They had the same amount of money in the cap as the Denver Broncos, who signed Zach Allen and Mike McGlinchey and things like that, and you signed Andre Dillard. So, go back to the end of that season, 2023. Vrabel's gone. Henry's gone. Tannehill's gone. It's time to blow it up. It's time to say, okay, it sucks to fire a general manager 1 year after it, but it's time. It's time to, let's blow it up, bring in somebody new to run the operation. Let's hire the right coach, that the person whom we're hiring to be the general manager or president of football operations or whatever the fuck you want to call it, let's hire them in here to run the show, and let's put together a solid foundation for a good team. And instead, because again, the Titans just blame one guy every time, it was, no, Rand's promoted. Levis is our franchise quarterback. Chad Brinker gets promoted, but we don't really know who's in charge. Stupid. Even after last year, team was terrible. They had the number 1 pick. Levis not the guy. I said, blow it up. I said, bring in an experienced football guy who's done it before at a high level, so that way, even if it's not the best football guy, it's at least somebody that you know has a clue. And instead, they blamed one guy. They blamed Rand. Callahan stays, you draft a quarterback number 1 overall, and now you're in this spot where you're kind of fucked either way, because if you keep Callahan on as the coach, he's going to keep coaching this shitstorm, or if you fire him, now you've drafted a quarterback number 1 overall, and now you're kind of scrambling again the way that bad teams like you and the Chicago Bears seem to do every time they draft a quarterback. It didn't have to be this way. And yet, the fan base, and I guarantee you the owner, they're falling right back into the same trap, which is, let's all blame it on one guy. Every show I've heard, every caller to a radio station, every comment I've had, it's Callahan this, Callahan that. Is Callahan a bad coach? Yeah, he's a bad coach. But he's not the only problem here. And getting rid of him doesn't really solve the big problems. Which takes me to yesterday's game. Are you going to win anything with Brian Callahan as the coach? Let me get this out of the way. No, you are not. But let's not pretend that coach is the only reason that you lost yesterday. It was 20-16 in the fourth quarter with 11 minutes to go, and Cam Ward fumbled the ball. The front office's big free agent acquisition, Dan Moore Jr., who actually had a decent PFF grade in game number 2, had a pass blocking grade of 26.4 in the first game. Is it the head coach who calls the offense? Is it his fault that the defense gave up 7 plays over 16 yards in the second half yesterday and only forced 1 punt? Is it the head coach's fault that this team drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick before he got here? Is it the head coach's fault that Calvin Ridley, Chig Okonkwo, and apparently Tony Pollard all can't catch anymore? And I'm not doing this thing where I'm saying it's absolutely not their faults. Sometimes people will defend coaches by saying, hey, if Ridley catches the ball here, then this play would have, and I don't do that. I'm not absolving Callahan from blame. In fact, far from it. I think Brian Callahan is a terrible coach. Terrible. I think he's a terrible coach, and I think he's a terrible offensive coordinator. For everybody saying, well, it's just too much to do 2 jobs at one time. Wasn't too much for the other guy to do it. Sean McVay calls the plays. In fact, you're 0-2. You've lost to 2 head coaches that call plays. Maybe Callahan just sucks at it. So I think he's a terrible coach. I think he's a terrible OC. I think his lack of improvement with the penalties and the adjustments that, again, I'm not going to call them second half adjustments. I'm going to call them penalties and adjustments that manifest themselves in the second half. That's an issue. And I think he is totally unaware. And he has no answers in terms of how to fix any of this. Again, his answer this offseason was, we're going to roll out the Pee Wee program. But I don't think firing Callahan today fixes the Titans. And yet, all I hear is, we need to fire Callahan, period. Sure, knock yourself out. Go fire the coach. But does that make you a better team? Your issues are deeper than just one guy. When the Titans fired Ken Wisenhunt and turned the team over to Mike Mularkey, it wasn't like they all of a sudden started winning games left and right. I think they won 2 more games the rest of the year. And they were horrible. And they were hard to watch. And that was with Mike Mularkey coaching them. And I think we can all agree now that time has passed, I think we can agree Mike Mularkey was a good coach. Wasn't a great coach. Wasn't a perfect coach. Wasn't Shula. He was a good coach. And he, coming into the middle of the season, couldn't really do that much. No, the problem was the team was drafting guys like Chance Warmack and Bishop Sankey and bums. I remember that year in 2015. The Titans took a fullback in the 4th round. They were the worst team in the league, tied with Tampa Bay the year before. They were 2-14, and they took a fullback in the 4th round. Jalston Fowler out of Alabama. And I remember saying at that time, if you are drafting a fullback in the 4th round, that means we're set at every other position, and we're taking a fullback. Wisenhunt stunk, but it didn't save the 2015 season. And if you're doing this thing where you're just blaming Callahan every day, then again, you're doing what you've done in the past, which is you're pinning it all on one guy and then letting everybody else who's fucking up get a pass. And the other thing I think that has to happen here is the Titans need to stop making the goals when it comes to their next coach, because it is inevitable that Brian Callahan will get fired. There is no turning this around. There is no changing this. There is no making this for the better. There is no. Brian Callahan is going to get fired, period. And so when they go looking for their next coach, how about this? How about they just try to hire the best coach? Instead of trying to make a decision right in front of them to fit a puzzle. Again, they hired Rand Carthon to collaborate with Mike Vrabel. They didn't hire somebody to be the general manager. They hired somebody to run the personnel department and hold hands with Mike Vrabel. And then that didn't work. They hired Mike Borgonzi to work with Chad Brinker. Again, they weren't looking for the best general manager candidate. They were looking for the best general manager candidate who would work for Chad Brinker. They hired Brian Callahan to coach Will Levis. And it is, in my opinion, inevitable that they will hire the next guy to coach Cam Ward. How about this? Just go hire the best guy. Just hire the best general manager and let him run the team. Stop trying to make every other decision with a previous decision in place. Did you really need to hire a coach for Will Levis? Because that's what the Bears do. The Bears hired Matt Nagy for Mitch Trubisky. The Bears hired Ben Johnson to save Caleb Williams. And if it doesn't work out with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, then Caleb's going to get the boot. So when it is time to start over again, and Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi, who apparently, from what I've been told, are not on good terms, whenever those two go looking for a coach, instead of looking for a coach to coach Cam Ward specifically, who might or might not be good, I mean, let's just be real. just go get the best coach and figure it out from there. Don't get the best coach who will work with those guys. Don't get the best coach to coach a specific player. Just go get a good coach, period. Just go get a good player. Just go get and I'll use Cam as an example. Because, hey, maybe Cam is the future. But if Cam's really, really good, he'll find a way to survive this shitstorm. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to get to is about Cam. And then I want to circle back on this coach thing because I do feel like a lot of the fans have kind of been talked down to when it comes to changing the coach. So I'm going to get to that in a second. But I do want to talk about Cam's performance yesterday because, I mean, I have heard a lot of comments and reaction and everything else of people being like, we've got our quarterback. Cam Ward we got a franchise quarterback, Jared. We've got our guy. Did you and I watch the same game yesterday? Now, the touchdown to I.O. Manor, that was a special play. Not gonna lie. I saw that and I was like, holy crap. That's the kind of play that got Cam compared to Patrick Mahomes before the draft. That's the kind of play that I saw on the tape at Miami, and I did wonder, is this type of stuff, this backyard football stuff, is this going to work in the NFL? Because it's worked for Mahomes, but it didn't work for Johnny Manziel. It worked for Russell Wilson, but it doesn't work for everybody. So that was a special play, and the catch that I.O. Manor made, the one-handed pinned it against the helmet, stayed in bounds. That was beautiful too. But again, one play, one highlight, and now it's, he's our guy. And I'm like, whoa now. Cam was 10 of 17 for 123 yards in the first half and a touchdown, which is good. You know, over the course of a game, you're looking at 20 completions for about 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a good. We'll take 20 of 34 for 250 and 2 scores and no turnovers. But the game didn't stop at halftime. Cam finished 19 of 33 for 175, 1 touchdown, and a fumble that essentially ended the game. In the second half, Cam was 9 for 16 for 52 yards. That's awful. And not only that, those 52 yards, most of that felt like it came when the Rams had gone to the prevent defense. Now, is it Cam's fault that his stats and play were so bad in the second half yesterday? I don't know. But when it comes to the, hey, Cam's touchdown throw was great, I agree. But that was one play yesterday. I thought his poise was good yesterday, but not as good as the Denver game. Again, he fumbled the ball in a clear franchise quarterback moment, down by 4 in the fourth quarter with the ball going up against a future Hall of Fame quarterback, and he fumbled the ball. And that's not good enough. And yesterday, Cam was not good. If you were a neutral fan who was watching yesterday's game, I really don't think you'd walk away from that thinking, Tennessee has found their guy at quarterback. That guy is awesome. That guy is. But because there's a lot of fans here who totally want to believe that he's the guy no matter what, they'll forget the bad stuff or they'll just blame it on Callahan and the offensive line. And again, they'll forget that in a 20-16 game with 11 minutes to go when Matthew Stafford had just led a 4-play drive for a touchdown that included throws of 24 and 22 to Puka, and Cam needed to answer, he fumbled the ball. Or when Cam started the drive by airmailing a throw for Chimere DK, who was wide open on first down. Cam's highlight was good, but his game overall yesterday was pretty crappy. Let's just be honest. And I'm not saying Cam sucks. I'm not saying Cam's a bust. I'm not saying I actually think Cam has outplayed in the 2 games given the circumstances. I think Cam has outperformed my expectations for him. Now, I don't think he's outperformed your expectations for him, but he's outperformed my expectations for him. So I think there's a lot of positives with Cam. But easy on the, he's the guy, we found our guy. Easy on that, guys. That's a little over the top. And for the whole, we've got our guy crowd and we're not going to hear any normal reasoning. Through 2 games, Will Levis had 500 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a quarterback rating of 96.4. The Will Levis, the guy who got all the blame for last year. Through 2 games, Cam Ward has thrown for 287, 1 touchdown, and has a quarterback rating of 69.5. Again, Levis, 96.4, Cam, 69.5. And after the second game with Levis, everybody was saying, we found our guy. It is impossible to truly believe the Titans have found a franchise quarterback through 2 games for anybody. But it's especially impossible when it's these 2 games. Jaden Daniels in week 2 of last year went shot for shot and beat Joe Burrow. Again, you scored 3 points in the second half yesterday. I'm not saying Cam's not the guy. And I want to make sure everybody knows that. Because again, I'm the bad guy when it comes to sitting back and saying, hey, Cam really wasn't all that good yesterday. The highlight play was freaking special. But as far as pretty much everything outside of the second quarter yesterday, Cam was pretty crappy. Let's hope he improves with this coaching staff. Who knows if he will? But again, that's a far cry between that and he's our guy. I mean, he's going to be great. Easy there. That one, I just say, it's impossible to know one way or the other at this point. So I want to put that out there. And again, Timothy on the YouTube chat says, too early to tell whether Cam is the guy or not. That is the correct opinion. It's too early to tell. I have been very impressed with some of the things Cam has done, and I've been very unimpressed by other things. And the question is, like I said with Levis, and whether or not he would develop into a franchise quarterback or not, it's all about how those guys learn from that mistake, and then the next time they go out there, the next season they go out there, did they recognize it in live time when the bullets are flying? So that's the second thing. The third thing on this Titans Monday, and then we'll get to some of your reaction to the YouTube chat. The third thing that I want to get to today is I want to defend the fans out there that want to fire Brian Callahan. Again, I am not somebody to say that I would fire Brian Callahan today. But the only reason that I wouldn't fire Brian Callahan today is because I just don't see the point in upsetting the apple cart. That's it. There is no other reason, in my opinion, to defend not firing Brian Callahan. And yet, I keep hearing people say they shouldn't fire Brian Callahan. And the people I keep hearing from, when it comes to those that are saying, oh, you can't fire Brian Callahan, I'm trying to figure out why can't I? Now, is firing Brian Callahan going to save this horrendous season, putting Mike McCoy in there with his crappy coaching staff? Probably not. Has the team quit on Brian Callahan? Again, probably not. I kind of just feel like they're not well coached. But here's what I'm not going to do. And I think I might be the only guy in the city of Nashville who's saying this or believes this or whatever. I'm not going to tell you that it's crazy to suggest that Brian Callahan should be fired today. Again, I wouldn't do it, but I also believe I don't think it makes anything worse if you did. Because at this point, how could it possibly get worse? And the two things I have heard the talking heads say, and for some reason the talking heads in this town seem to be united in the idea that you can't fire Brian Callahan right now. The two things I've heard them say, number one, it would be worse for Cam to fire Brian Callahan right now. Can I ask how? They're not changing the system. So if they fire Callahan and they make Mike McCoy the head coach, and either Nick Holtz or Bo Hardigree calls the plays, and I would rather have Bo Hardigree call the plays, but if they have Bo Hardigree call the plays or they have Nick Holtz call the plays, they're not changing the system. I heard somebody on the radio today, which I shouldn't be surprised because, come on now. But I heard somebody today on the radio talk about, well, if you do that, then you've got 3 systems in 15 months for Cam. That's not true. It's one system. It's one system. That's it. It's the same plays. It's the same scheme. It's the same everything. It's the same coaching staff. You're not changing the terminology. You're not changing anything. So you would have 2 systems for Cam. But again, you're going to fire Callahan at the end of the year anyway, so you would have always had 2 systems for Cam. So this idea that, oh man, it would be so much worse for Cam Ward to fire Brian Callahan. Why? Did it hurt Marcus Mariota that the Titans fired Ken Wisenhunt to put Mike Mularkey in their midseason? I don't think it did. I think the damage that whole situation had already affected Mariota, I think that had already set in. And I think the way that this would affect Cam, it's already happened. The sin has already occurred. You started the year with Callahan, and you knew he was on the hot seat, so you knew that if he proved that he couldn't coach, then you were going to have to fire him and hire a new coach, and Cam was going to have to learn a new system. So I don't think it's worse for Cam Ward if you fired Brian Callahan today, and instead of Callahan calling the play, it's Bo Hardigree calling the play. Again, this team lacks discipline. This team doesn't make any adjustments. And I think that's on the whole coaching staff more so than it is just one guy. But maybe Mike McCoy can do something about it. I don't know. So I don't see how this would be worse for Cam. Again, when we already all think they're going to fire him at the end of the year anyways. Right? We're all in agreement on that. They're going to fire Callahan at the end of the year, so he's going to have to learn a new scheme next season anyways. And then number 2, and I can't believe some people in this town were saying shit like this because this is some of the stupidest crap I've ever heard. The second argument for not getting rid of Callahan, that, again, all of the talking heads, both radio stations, former players, they're all united that they should not fire Callahan, Paul. They should not fire Callahan, which I think is really crazy. But people are saying, well, Cam likes Brian Callahan because Cam said on some Fortnite stream that Brian Callahan was the best coach in the NFL before he got drafted. Because Cam goes up to the podium and is like, I always have confidence in the coaches and the responsibilities they give me and blah, blah, blah. Number 1, you don't know if Cam likes Brian Callahan or not. Cam may be sitting there thinking this guy is a total schmuck, but he's never going to say that. I remember Kevin Byard, after the Titans went to Denver in 2019, when Mariota got benched for Tannehill. The Monday after, the Titans did not announce that Mariota was going to be benched until Wednesday. So on Monday, Kevin Byard, who was the team's spokesperson when things were going poorly, got up there and talked about how this team believes in Mariota. This team believes in number 8. We've always believed in number 8. And when he goes back out there, we're going to have his back and he's going to be great. And then on Wednesday, Kevin Byard's tone changed to, we believe in Tannehill and we're excited for Tannehill. And when Tannehill goes out there, we believe that he's going to win. But that's kind of how I feel when it comes to what Cam says. The second thing is, what the hell does Cam know? How does Cam know who's a good coach or who's not a good coach? Cam is a quarterback. And not only is he a quarterback, he's a rookie quarterback. So he's not exactly Matthew Stafford, nor is he Joe Flacco when it comes to his knowledge of coaches and the game and who's good and who's not. What does Cam know about who's a good coach? What does Cam know about who is the best coach for him? My son is 9 months old, and he goes to preschool. He doesn't get to pick his teachers. Will Levis liked Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly. Marcus Mariota liked Mike Mularkey. Did anybody care what the quarterback thought then? Of course not. So again, all of the talking heads in this town have just all kind of chained together, and they've all said, you can't fire Brian Callahan today. And while if I owned the team, I wouldn't fire Brian Callahan, I don't think that the fans that want to fire Callahan should be talked down to as much as they are. I mean, this again has been a, hey, you can't fire him. It'll hurt Cam Ward if you fire him. You know what else will hurt Cam Ward? Doing the same shit. And you know what Brian Callahan's proven through 19 attempts at this? He does the same shit. So, again, when I hear people say things like, oh, no, fans, you can't feel that. You shouldn't feel that way. I'm like, why not? What has Brian Callahan done to earn this idea that keeping him on as coach would be a better idea than getting rid of him as coach? It's like people thinking that Callahan's going to change. He's 3-16. He stinks. He's not going to change. He's not going to learn how to discipline these guys. He's not going to learn how to make second half adjustments. This is the NFL. If he was going to learn it, he'd have learned it by now. Well, Tom Landry took him X amount of years before. Okay, and that was a different era. Free agency, the draft, being able to go out and get the best college players, that's different. So I'm on your side. You people that want to fire Callahan, again, I'm not on your side saying that I would fire Callahan. I'm on your side saying that you should be allowed to say that that they could fire Callahan. So I don't feel the need to scratch the itch of firing the coach that many of you have, but I also don't see any real reason against it. And it's not like you're in first place and, about to play a divisional game at home in December, and firing the coach would set off some sort of massive distraction that could send you into a 5-game tailspin to end the season and cost you a trip to the playoffs or anything like that. So I wouldn't do it. But the reasons that apparently the media in town is giving you as to why they shouldn't fire Brian Callahan, the idea that it would be worse for Cam, or, well, Cam likes Brian Callahan, I'm sorry, that's bullshit. Callahan has had 19 games. He can't coach. And he hasn't shown through these 19 games that he's got any sign of being able to figure it out. The problem is, like I said last week, that's a January problem, not a September problem. So as far as people telling you that, oh no, you can't do it now, come on now. So I do want to get to some of your chats, some of your comments here in the YouTube chat. Silky G says Callahan can construct a game plan. However, he does not know how to adjust in-game or after halftime. He is being asked to do something he has never done before, which is be a head coach and call plays. So can I ask why Kevin O'Connell's allowed to do that when he had never called plays and had never been a head coach before? Or why Ben Johnson is allowed to do it? Or why every coach that has never called plays before and has gone off to be a head coach, why they're allowed to do it, but apparently Callahan can't do it? I think we need to stop trying to say, okay, well, Callahan's good at this or Callahan kind of sucks at everything. The offense sucks. The defense sucks. The special teams last year, when it was his guy running it, sucked. This year, Bones Fossil, veteran coach, I'm sure Callahan has just farmed out that portion of the game to Bones Fossil, because what the hell is Brian Callahan going to say to Bones Fossil when it comes to special teams? That seems to be the only bright spot anyways. So, again, what does Callahan do well? With Vrabel, at least we had, hey, here's what Vrabel does well. Vrabel is a great motivator. Vrabel is a tireless worker. Vrabel holds people accountable. Vrabel, and this is not a shot at Callahan because I've said this about Vrabel for years. Vrabel has read the rule book inside and out. Callahan, not so much. So, what does he do well? And the answer is nothing. And I'm not going to get caught up in the semantics. I'm not letting him off the hook with the semantics of, well, halftime is not long enough to adjust. The truth is that the Titans, with Callahan as the coach, play a competitive 2 quarters of football, go into the locker room, and they come out and they look like complete and utter shit. They did that last year, and they're doing that this year. The one constant in all of this is Callahan, because Cam Ward wasn't on the team last year. It's Callahan. I mean, they were competitive in the first half on the road at Detroit last year. And by the time you get to the fourth quarter, it's like, hey, Lord, please let the game go to a running clock so we can just put us out of our misery for this terrible Titans game, just like yesterday. But what happens is Callahan gets asked about that when people keep saying things like, well, you know, it's not really halftime adjustments because there's not enough time in the NFL to make adjustments, and we're making adjustments the whole game, and okay, well, the adjustments you make during the game stink because you don't make good enough adjustments. The other coaches every week seem to make better adjustments than you. Whether it's the idea of it happening at halftime or it happening on the sideline with their little iPads or whatever is really non-consequential to me. It's like Callahan is trying to get out of trouble for the reality that he gets worked by the other coach because of the technicality that, well, no, it's not technically halftime where we adjust. No, whatever. I'm not getting into that. There are adjustments. The other teams seem to make them. Sean McVay seems to make them. You seem to not make them. Why is that? And that includes defense too, which Callahan's the head coach of this thing. But Denard, you know, the second half gets his ass kicked consistently. One person says, I have been asking why the Titans have not taken play calling duties away from Callahan, and nobody will answer. Again, I think that's just like a fan thing that people are getting too worked up about. Like, people are getting too focused on, you know, oh my God, like, well, he can't call the plays and he can't do this at the same time and he can't. I mean, how many coaches in the NFL can't call the plays and coach effectively? And when's the last time there was an offensive guru coach who was hired to call the plays, that gave up the play calling, and it worked? That doesn't happen very often. DJ says that Nissan Stadium looked pretty weak with the attendance on TV. Plenty of empty seats. So I did have tickets to the game. I didn't go. Mainly because I didn't want to, but also because Postgame Live was on after the game was over, and I don't want to leave the game in the third quarter to go home and host a postgame show. And again, the team sucks. Why am I going to go to the game? I was surprised at how empty the stadium was. I mean, it was, you could just see like giant specks of red and blue on the screen. Chaz says, Callahan should be gone at 0-4 if he is deemed by the GM and owner. But Jared, you have to look at the lack of talent on this roster that adjustments can only do so much about. I mean, this roster's bad. It's not that bad. It's not so bad that of your last 16 games, I heard Robbie Stanley say this today, of your last 16 games, you've been beaten by double digits in the NFL, which is a socialist government, and every game is played to be close. You've been beaten by double digits 8 times in 16 games. You never, ever, ever see the Titans, although Sean Payton helped last week, you almost never see them in the Callahan era cover the spread. So, no, it's bad. Give me a break. And enough with there's only so much time. There's only so much time out there to adjust at halftime. Okay, fine. But we know that other coaches adjust during the game. Whether it happens exactly at halftime or not, to me, it doesn't matter. It's just an excuse to say, oh, there's only so much time at halftime. The other guys are adjusting and you are not. And that's why you play a close game in the first half and get your ass kicked in the second half. And anybody who argues otherwise just hasn't watched the Titans. Now, I do want to go on a little bit of a you people rant, if I may. So I was listening to Kaharski's podcast yesterday, which is also right here on the 440 Sports Network. I was listening to Kaharski's podcast yesterday, and he just kind of rolls through. Like it's kind of, again, it's a different kind of thing, but he just kind of rolls through questions and goes constantly through that, and that's fine. But it was more so the questions than it was what Paul said that kind of, I said, wait a minute, what? Listen to some of these questions. This was Kaharski yesterday on the Paul Kaharski podcast. Again, right here, you can hear it on the 440 Sports Network.
Harbaugh, Mike McDonald, Quinn, all available when we hired Cal. You understand that we're going to hire Harbaugh, right? You understand after Vrabel, you're not going to hire Harbaugh, right? Mike McDonald and Quinn, good coaches. Understand not going to hire a defensive guy, right? Because you had the offensive coordinator problem. And the offensive coordinator problem is a real problem. You hire a defensive head coach. And when you have a defensive head coach, it's very difficult if you have a good offensive coordinator to lose him and replace him. And Vrabel had that problem. So I can understand not hiring Harbaugh, personality-wise, and I can understand not hiring a defensive head coach because you're in the offensive coordinator hell. And if you're going to, every time you have a good offensive coordinator, get him hired away for a head coaching job like happened with Arthur Smith, then you've got to find another offensive coordinator, and if he's good, you got to find another offensive coordinator. And so these are difficult things. Won the Super Bowl with Tony Dungy's players, but when he took over getting players, the Bucs faltered badly. In his second stint with the Raiders, he had bad drafts and think he's overrated. Well, look, they're not hiring a head coach who's going to be acquiring players if they're hiring a head coach. Players don't clear waivers over the weekend. We'll find out tomorrow. Crenshaw Dixon is not anything special. They care about Harbaugh's personality because they didn't want to deal with another difficult personality because they were trying to find a system where the coach, the GM, the front office, the owner all could work in some sort of collaboration. And they got away with that as far as they were concerned with Vrabel. So they didn't want more of that. So that's who cares about Harbaugh's personality. Why is everyone overreacting? Did you expect anything other than 0-2? I think it's reasonable. I mean, I think they got to 0-2 in an ugly fashion. But, yeah, I think most of us expected 0-2. So, it's a little crazy to go into this level of pain.
Okay, so with that, I want to go on a little bit of a you people rant, if I may. Because why are people concerned about this? Why are people sitting there saying, oh my God, we could have had Harbaugh. Let's go back and relitigate the decision to hire Callahan. Really? First of all, you could not have had Jim Harbaugh. You think Jim Harbaugh 2 years ago was going to pick this and working with Rand Carthon over Justin Herbert and total control in L.A.? No. People are saying, bring in John Gruden. In fact, old buddy on the YouTube chat just now, David says, bring in John Gruden. People again are relitigating that why did we hire a coach who had never called plays in the NFL and had never been a head coach before? Because that's what you do. That was working. It worked with Sean McVay, and it worked with Kevin O'Connell, and it worked with Zach Taylor, and it's worked with these guys before. Andy Reid leaves Green Bay, goes to Philadelphia. Pretty good coach. So, again, sometimes I think you people are worried about all the wrong things. And my favorite one, and this is another you people thing, another rant I just have to go on, which is the idea that we all knew the Titans were going to be 0-2 before the season. When we saw Denver and the Rams, we knew they were going to be 0-2. They're 0-2 now, so why are people all worked up about it? And I'm going to answer this question for you. Because in the NFL, you still have to live through the game. All offseason, I had people telling me that they knew that this team was going to be bad and that we were going to have to suck it up and it was going to be a rebuilding year and the only thing that mattered was Cam and it was going to be a work in progress and we knew Dan Moore wasn't going to be Trent Williams at left tackle and we knew that. And then you play the game. And this is the hard part, is because it's the NFL. If you've got a shitty baseball team you follow, the truth is you just don't watch them. I love the Atlanta Braves. I watched the Atlanta Braves every day growing up when I was a kid. Why? Because they were on TBS and they won the division every year. I pay for FanDuel Sports Network to watch the Predators and watch the Braves. But when they stink like they've stunk this year and the Predators stunk last year, I just kind of stop watching. Out of sight, out of mind. But this is the NFL. And in the NFL, there is no out of sight, out of mind. The games happen. Everybody watches them. And not only does everybody watch them, but everybody also kind of pays attention to everybody else too. Which means you have friends that are not Titan fans who are looking at you saying, holy shit, why does your team suck so bad? Yesterday, when the Chiefs game was over and the Colts game was over, there was one game left before Sunday Night Football. It was Arizona, Carolina. I flipped to the game and I watched the very end of it. And do you think I give a rat's ass about either Arizona or Carolina? The NFL is just a different beast. And so when people kept saying, I know the Titans are going to be bad. We know the Titans are going to be bad. We know this season's going to be hard. We know. I kept saying, I know. But then when you have to live it, you're going to be angry. Even if you knew this team was going to be bad. And here we are, week 2, and the entire fan base wants to fire the coach. Again, I'm not against firing the coach. I think the guy is a terrible coach, but it's not. I mean, I thought that when he didn't change his defensive and offensive coordinators. I knew that when he brought up the Pee Wee program. But everybody kept saying, we know they're going to be bad, Jared. We know it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And I'm like, no. It won't be fine. You say it will be fine, but it will not be fine when you have to play the games. It's not fine right now, is it? And Amy struggles with that too, by the way. Jack says Gruden talk needs to cease in this state. Let me say this. I think there's a chance that an SEC school will hire John Gruden because there's going to be, 3 or 4 jobs every year that open up in the SEC. And I think John Gruden knows that too, which is why John Gruden has gone and talked at the quarterback club I think it's the quarterback club or the touchdown club or whatever it is in Fayetteville. The real true red-blooded Arkansas fans there. Woo pig. That's why he went and talked to Florida. And I think Gruden would take an SEC job, and I think that he'll get offered one. Gruden is not going to coach in the NFL. Gruden is suing the NFL. The NFL is not going to let a team hire a coach who is actively suing the league. So that is not going to happen. So that may be the end of me talking about John Gruden there, but again, go to the Kaharski podcast where everybody on the Kaharski podcast, Mike McCarthy this and this one that and this and the, and I have decided that on tomorrow's show, we are going to start the Callahan replacement hot board. That will be something that we do go over. What I hate is that at the beginning of the show, I always kind of have things I want to talk about, and I look through the YouTube chat. I'm like, I want to make sure I get to that, but then I don't. One person was talking about Skoronski saying, hey, Skoronski actually had a good game yesterday. Just saying, here you go, Jack says Skoronski is actually a top guard over the past 2 weeks. Just saying, Rand still sucks. So I think Skoronski's been playing okay. Here's the problem. For a guard with the 11th pick, he's got to be a Hall of Famer by year 3. He's not a Hall of Famer. It's not going to happen. Joe says Brian Flores has sued the NFL and he's still a DC. Yeah, but he's not a head coach. And I don't think anybody's going to make him a head coach. And let me say this with Brian Flores. If Brian Flores had been fired by the Dolphins and hadn't sued the NFL, but if he had just been fired by the Dolphins and had just accepted it, who thinks he would have gotten another job? And people would have said, well, the Dolphins, it's kind of screwed up. It's all this. I'm telling you, he'd be a head coach right now, or he would have gotten a second shot to be a head coach if he hadn't sued the league. You sue the league, you're not going to get a job. I mean, think about it. No owner is going to hire Brian Flores with the fear that Brian Flores is then going to turn them in the way that they turned in the last guy. And that wants to take me to kind of the final piece of today's program. And I know everything in Titanland on Titan Monday is bad. And we will get into the college talk. Tennessee, heartbreaker on Saturday. Poor kid out there, Holly Rose on the sidelines talking about the guys doing his breathing exercises. I'm like, he's fucked. And he missed the kick. Vanderbilt kicked that ass at South Carolina. Vandy is legit. And they are a college football playoff contender. Brian Kelly threw a temper tantrum. It was a great college week. But I want to end Titans Monday on a positive note. So over the weekend, the Canadian, and this is, by the way, a personal positive note. Over the weekend, the Canadian Country Music Association held their yearly awards. And for the second year in a row, my partner, Jack's mom, Lindsay Hislop, was named the Industry Person of the Year. Back-to-back, 2 years in a row. Everybody always says things when somebody accomplishes something like, I'm so proud, when there's a major accomplishment. And yes, I am very, very proud. Again, she went back-to-back. And on Friday, I said, that's like Michael Jordan. That's like Tom Brady or Derek Jeter or Nick Saban. But being the Industry Person of the Year means that Lindsay is the best at what she does for her entire country. She is a Canadian citizen, and she is the Industry Person of the Year in Canadian country music. It's like being named league MVP. And in the last 2 years, Lindsay has won this award while being pregnant and raising a newborn. And also, over those 2 years, she's had to deal with me, which I'm sure many of you can understand is a full-time job in and of itself. And as you can see in the picture on the screen, Lindsay looks pretty good while doing it. But Lindsay, while starting a family, also recently had to deal with the loss of her and our Australian Shepherd, Stevie. It was absolutely crushing to me, but even more so to Lindsay, who flew a red-eye home from Calgary, where she was with Lainey Wilson just to get home so she could say goodbye when we suddenly found out that Stevie needed emergency surgery and did not have long. That was Lindsay's soul dog, a rescue who was there with Lindsay every step of the way. And when she won the award on Friday, again, Industry Person of the Year for the Canadian Country Music Association, she dedicated her award to Stevie. I'm incredibly happy that Lindsay was recognized for all the hard work and the dedication that she puts into her job on a daily basis. She has the exact same mentality when it comes to how she handles our family. And I just wanted everybody that listens to this show to know how freaking proud Jackson and I are of her. So congrats, Linz. We love you. Again, back to back. So I wanted to end today on a positive note. that's it for us. We're back tomorrow at 2 o'clock going live. Again, wherever you get your podcast. I actually did see we have literally 999 subscribers right now. Go be number 1,000 right here on the program to subscribe. And tomorrow at 2 o'clock, there are two things the Titans are going to have to address. One is the path they go to next. And two is who should be the coach next season. Because forget about this season and forget about this coach. And so we will do that. Until then, like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts, across all digital platforms. And, of course, YouTube. We want to get to 1,000 subs ASAP. Stillman and Company, 440 Sports. We'll see everybody tomorrow, again live at 2 o'clock and wherever you get your podcasts.